Welcome to the latest installment of the 30-Minute Workout Series. My name is Jeff Bartels, and I'm joined today by my colleagues Stacy Morican and Lou Holland. In today's session, we're going to pick up where we left off in the last session. As you know, we've been working on a 4-part series to help you get up and running using BIM Collaborate Pro to host your Civil 3D projects in the cloud. Across the last 3 sessions, we've learned how to create a cloud project, build a directory structure, upload and view files. We've learned how to invite members and assign permissions. We've learned how to assign work to people and track that work to completion. We've also seen how we can synchronize our Civil 3D environment to the cloud. In today's session, we're going to be learning how we can manage Civil 3D project data in the cloud environment. As we've been doing these sessions, we've been taking a step-by-step approach to things, doing everything with live demonstration. We've also been including practical examples to show you different ways you could take advantage of Autodesk's cloud platform. These sessions do have some ground rules, and we've been through these a few times, so I'm not going to run through them again. One thing I do want to mention, though, is questions. In the event you have questions, please put those in the Q&A pane. It's the most efficient way for the folks working behind the scenes to find and respond to those questions. In the event we have remaining questions at the end of the session, we will get back to you with an answer so long as we have your permission. As always, we've got a lot of things to talk about. Today, we're going to learn how we can manage Civil 3D content, things like external references, data shortcuts, and sheet sets. We'll also look at how we can configure sheet sets for cloud use. Along the way, I'm going to be sharing some best practices. We'll do a practical example, and at the end of the session, I'll be sharing some additional resources. As always, this is going to be a PowerPoint-free zone. We'll be working live in the application for the duration of our time together today. Okay, let me drop out of this. As you can see, I'm starting out here in the web browser. I've gone to acc.autodesk.com, and I've selected this project we've been working on, Wesley Road Extension. Since we're going to be talking about sheet sets and data shortcuts today, notice I have created a pair of new folders in this project. I've created a folder called C3D Data. Currently, this is empty. This folder is going to be the working folder for my data shortcuts. We'll look at those in a little bit. I've also created a sheet set folder, also empty. This one is going to hold my sheet set, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So I've got 2 new folders. Knowing that, let's jump over to Civil 3D. I'd like to start by talking about externally referencing files in the cloud. We're going to do that by opening a drawing. I'm going to click Open, and then I'm going to navigate to that Autodesk Docs Drive letter. I'll select my account. I will then select my project. And inside the CAD files folder, I am going to select this drawing called Roadway Corridor. This is one of the files that we uploaded in the last session. As you know, when we open this file, it is locking that file in the cloud. It is also pulling that file and caching it locally to my machine if it needs to. I now have ownership of this drawing. To externally reference files, I am going to type XREF because I'm old-fashioned. And in the External References Manager, I'll right-click and I'll choose Attach DWG. Once again, I will navigate to my cloud project. And inside the CAD files folder, I'm going to reference these 2 files, the one with the fiber optic line and the utilities. I'm just going to hold my Shift key. We'll select both of them. We'll reference both of these files at the same time. When you're externally referencing files in the cloud, you want to use a relative path. Full paths are not allowed when working in the cloud. Other than this setting, the remaining settings you can adjust to your liking. I'm going to keep the rest of these at the defaults, and I'll click OK. And you can see both of those files were referenced. If I select the fiber optic line, we can see that highlight in the drawing. If I select the utilities, we can see that highlight as well. In fact, I think it works the other way. If I could select the fiber here, we can see that highlight over in the palette. After seeing this, you're probably thinking, well, that's very similar to how it works on my local server. And you're correct. That's the nice thing about working on Civil 3D projects in the cloud. The learning curve is very small. It's a lot like you're working off of another drive letter. I'm going to close the External References Manager, and then I am going to save this drawing. So that is essentially how external references work in the cloud. Let me close this. Next, I'd like to talk about data shortcuts. Once again, I'm going to open a drawing. I'll come up and launch the Open command, and then I am going to open this drawing called Topo. This drawing contains an existing ground surface. If I zoom in and hover, we can see that's called EG. I would like to make this surface available to other folks working on this project in the event they'd like to access this data in other drawings. When we're going to create data shortcuts, the most important thing is to first set our working folder. I'm going to do that by going to the Manage ribbon tab, and in the Data Shortcuts panel, I'll choose Set Working Folder. I will then navigate to my cloud project. I'll select that. And then if you remember, I created this folder called C3D Data. I will select that as my working folder. When you're creating data shortcuts in the cloud, your working folder will be stored within your project directory, and it needs to be at least one level down from the project files folder. Let me choose select, and I'm going to jump out to the web browser here for a second. You can see right there, there's my working folder. It's inside the project directory, and it's one level down from project files. At the end of today's session, I'm going to be sharing a hyperlink with some documentation that explains the hows and the whys and the reasons for this. For now, just know that as long as your working folder is placed here, your data shortcuts in the cloud will work just like they do on a local server. I'm going to jump back to Civil 3D. And now that I've set my working folder, I need to create a data shortcuts folder. To do that, I'll come up and click New Shortcuts Folder. This is the dialog box we typically use to create Civil 3D projects on a local server. I'm sure you've done this before. You've clicked this toggle, and then you've selected a folder that represents the directory structure you'd like to use for your project. When we are working in the cloud, we are not going to use this toggle. That's because the directory structure will have already been created in the cloud. That directory structure will either have been created manually, like we've been doing over these last few sessions, or it will have been created from a cloud-based template. The only thing I need this dialog box for is to create a data shortcuts folder. You can see right here, it's going to be placing it within the working folder. I'm going to call this shortcuts folder Civil Shortcuts, and I'll come down and click OK. And when I do, if we come over to the prospector, you can see that it recognizes the data shortcuts are in the cloud. We can see the cloud icon there. To create a data shortcut for this surface, I'm going to come up and choose Create Data Shortcuts, and then I'll choose the existing ground surface, and I'll click OK. And if we come back to Prospector, we can see that show up here. If I expand the surfaces category, there is that surface. If I drag this down, we can see the surface name, the file that it lives in, and if I drag this over, we can see the path to that file. This is what allows those data shortcuts to function in the cloud because everybody's path is going to be the same. They're all going to start out with Autodesk docs. Okay, now that I've created that data shortcut, I am going to save this drawing, and we will close it, and we'll test the data shortcut. I'm going to create a new drawing. We talked about creating new drawings in the previous session. When we're creating a new drawing, whether we're creating it for the cloud or the local server, the process is going to be the same. I'm going to select my template. So wherever your template lives today that you're using for local projects, it's going to keep living in that same place if you're working on the cloud. Before I reference that surface data, I'm going to save this drawing in the cloud. I'm going to do that by typing Save As, once again, old-fashioned, and then I am going to call this Wesley Alignment. And I'll click Save. Whenever you're referencing or linking files together for cloud use, you want to make sure those files exist in the cloud first before you start connecting them. Okay, now that this is stored in the cloud, I am going to reference my surface. I'll come over to the prospector and select that existing ground surface, and then I will click, hold, and drag to drop that data into this file. Let me click OK, and then I will double-click the mouse wheel to do a zoom extents, and we can see that surface data is now available in this drawing. Let's create an alignment. I'm going to go to the Home tab, open the Alignment menu, and choose Alignment Creation Tools. And I'm going to call this alignment Wesley. I'll click OK. And I'm just going to create a simple alignment for this example, tangent, tangent with curves. We'll just pick a couple points, and I'll press Enter. Then I can close this. Now that I have an alignment, let's pull a surface profile. We'll use this surface data that we referenced. I'll select the alignment, and then from the ribbon, I'll choose Surface Profile. I'll sample the existing ground surface. I'll draw in Profile View, create Profile View, and then I'll place the Profile View over here. I will then save my drawing. So this drawing that I just created has some new civil data in it now. I've got this alignment, and I've got a surface profile that was extracted from this referenced surface. I would like to now create data shortcuts for these items as well, in case other people in my project would like to leverage this content. Once again, we'll go back to the Manage ribbon tab, and I'll choose Create Data Shortcuts. I will then select all of these, and I'll click OK. And then same as what we're used to on a local server, if I come over here to the Prospector tab and expand Alignments, and my alignments in my profile, we'll see there is that surface profile, and there's the Wesley alignment. Okay, so that's how our data shortcuts work in the cloud. Next, we're going to talk about sheet sets. Let's close this drawing, and I'm going to click the New button just to get access to the Civil 3D interface. Before we jump into sheet sets, let me mention that when you are creating or printing sheet sets, it's going to want to access some CAD standards, and those CAD standards need to be stored within a cloud project. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick field trip. If you'll indulge me, let me show you something here. I'm going to come down to the web browser, and then I'm going to open the project menu, and I'll choose View All Projects. I would like to select a project. I'm going to type in this text string CAD. I've created a project called Company CAD Standards. I created this project for the purpose of holding the CAD standards that will be used when people are working with sheet sets. In this project, underneath the Project Files folder, I've created a folder called Support Files. And if I expand this, you can see in there I've created a folder for fonts. I've got one for line types. This is holding SHX files that are part of custom line types. I've got one for pen tables, CTBs, STBs, things like that. And I've got one for sheet set templates, so you can see some of the examples that I have in there. Now, I chose to store my CAD standards in like a single universal project. Having said that, you could store the CAD standards in individual projects if you want to. The most important thing to note is that anybody that is going to be creating or plotting sheet sets will need to be invited to the project that contains the CAD standards, and they'll also need edit permission to the folders. Okay, let's return. I'm going to go back to my Wesley project. I'm going to use this text string at the top to find that. And then we'll jump back over to Civil 3D. To create a sheet set, I'm going to go to the Home tab, and then I'll expand the Palettes panel. And right here, I can open the Sheet Set Manager. Now, this is the same Sheet Set Manager dialog box we have used forever. To create a new sheet set, I'll open the menu and choose New Sheet Set. Notice there's a new option now that allows me to create a sheet set from a cloud example sheet set. This feature was introduced in Civil 3D 2023.1. So if you want to work with sheet sets in the cloud, you'll need to be on 2023.1 or newer in order to access this feature. I'm going to click Next. Creating sheet sets in the cloud is very similar to how we do it on a local server. First thing it's going to ask me is for a name for the sheet set. I'm going to call this Wesley Project. I can enter a description if I want to, and then I can select the sheet set that represents the template that I want to build my sheet set from. If I open this menu, you can see there's some that are hard-coded. I would like to click this folder because I want to select my own sheet set template. This is where I'm going to point to that CAD Standards project. First thing we'll do is select the account, and we've talked about this. I have access to too many accounts. In your case, you'll probably just see one or two items. In the event these are hard to read, you can simply hover over them to see the full name. I'm going to select this account called JWB Engineering ACC, and from here I'll choose that Company CAD Standards project we looked at a second ago. If you remember, the sheet set template is inside the Project Files folder, Support Files, and it's inside this sheet set folder. I'm going to select this DST file as my template, and I'll click Select. In case you're wondering about your current sheet set template, the one that you're using for your projects on a local server, you can use that exact same template in the cloud. All you have to do is put that into a cloud project. Now that I've chosen the template, I need to tell Civil 3D where the new sheet set that I'm creating from that template is going to go. This is going to go into my Wesley Road project. Let me click the folder. And then once again, I will select my account. And then I'll roll this down and find my Wesley Road extension project. And I want to save this new sheet set within the Project Files folder. If you remember, there's that sheet set folder that I made or showed you that I made at the beginning of today's session. To select this folder, I'm not going to click the folder itself. That'll take me into the folder. To choose the folder, I'm going to click the toggle next to it, and I'll click Select. I will then click Next. This shows me the contents of my sheet set. Now, it's not a very exciting sheet set. I don't have a bunch of subsets in here. I do have some custom properties. If I drag up and down, you can see these. So any custom properties you're using today, these will work in the cloud. Let's click Create. And when the sheet set's created, watch this palette. You'll see it change. In Civil 3D 2023.1 and above, when you are opening or editing a sheet set stored in the cloud, it will open in this new Sheet Set Manager for Web palette. If you are opening or editing a sheet set stored on your local server, it's going to continue using the traditional palette, and it will do that automatically. Now, even though this cloud palette looks a little bit different, it functions very similar. If I select the sheet set name up at the top, I can view and edit the properties down below. I'm going to change the project name here. We'll call this Wesley Road. Maybe we'll put a project number in here. I'll make this PR-00993333. That'll be good enough. Note that if you want to create some custom properties, you can. If I click this plus button, I can create a new sheet set property or sheet property from here. To add sheets to a sheet set, I will right-click on the sheet set, and you can see several items here in the menu. From here, I'll choose Import Sheet. This will take me into my Wesley Road project, and then I can select the drawings that contain the layouts that I'd like to add to the sheet set. I'm going to go into the CAD files folder, and I'm going to select this drawing that's got a cover sheet. This one's got a detail, and this one's got general notes. I'll click select. And then the platform is going to look at those drawings and identify any layouts that live in those files such that I can add those to my sheet set. As you can see, each drawing has a single layout. I'm going to select all 3 of these and I'll click import. And we can see the import was successful. Let me close this. Once sheets have been added to a sheet set, I can rearrange them just by dragging and dropping, just like we can on a local server. Let's push this one back up to the top. If I want to create subsets, I can right-click on the sheet set name. I'll choose new subset. Subset's a lot like a group. If I select the subset, I can edit the properties down below. I'm going to change the name. I'll just call this new group, for lack of a better term. Once you create a subset, you can drag and drop sheets into and out of that subset, much like we can within the traditional palette. I'm going to drag this back out. To open a sheet, we can double-click on it. And when the sheet comes up, you can see that it's acquiring the property information that I edited. So there's the project name and project number. If I wanted to edit the county, for instance, I'm going to select the sheet set name, and I will drag this down and find the county attributes. And I'm going to change this to DeKalb. I'll do a quick regen, and you can see how that updates. Next, let's talk about rename and renumber. I'm going to drag this over so we can see the number property. To rename and renumber, I can select a sheet, and if I right-click, we'll see there's a menu of options. From here, I'll choose rename and renumber. I'm sure you've done this before. I'm going to change the sheet number here to 1. I'll click Next, 2, Next, 3, and I'll click OK. You can see the numbers there. Let me do a quick regen. We can see how that updates here on screen. I show you that to show you this. When we're working in the cloud, there's an auto renumber feature. If I select the sheet set or one of the subsets and right-click, we'll find an option called auto numbering. When I choose that, I can assign a prefix like C for civil, A for architectural. I'm not going to use a prefix right now. I'm going to enter a start number. I'll type 10 for this example. And when I click OK, you can see how that renumbers the sheets automatically. Once again, I'll do a regen to update that on screen. Let's look at some of the other options. I'm going to right-click on the sheet set. Note that we can e-transmit the sheet set from here. I can also publish to PDF. If I want to publish this to PDF, the sheet set needs to know where those CAD standards are. When we're working in the cloud, the sheet sets, I'm going to select the sheet set. The sheet sets will have a new property called support file location. I'm going to flip this from default to browse, and then I can navigate to that project containing those CAD standards. I'm going to choose the company CAD standards project we looked at a second ago, and then I'm going to go into project files. And here's the support files folder. I'm going to choose that by clicking the toggle next to this. If you remember, this folder included a folder called line types and fonts and pen tables and things like that. There's no magic to the way those were organized or the names of the folders. You can use whatever structure you want. All I'm saying here is that this support files folder contains my CAD standards. When I click select, the application is going to crawl through those folders and look for SHX files, CTBs, STBs. It's going to look for fonts and things like that. It's going to index them such that when the sheet set is printed in the future, it will know where those objects are located. And I can see that the indexing has succeeded. Let me close this. I'm going to save this drawing. And then if I wanted to plot these sheets, I'm going to right-click on the sheet set, and I'll come down and choose Publish to PDF. When I publish this, I can create a single multi-page PDF file, or I can plot these as separate PDFs. Right here, I can give the PDF a name. In the interest of time, I'm just going to keep the default here. Note that your PDFs will be stored within the sheet set folder by default. I can pick a different location just by clicking here. In the interest of time, I'm going to keep the default. There's another option here, a toggle called Overwrite Files if duplicate name exists. Probably not the best wording. It should say Version Up Files if duplicate name exists, because that's what it's doing. Since this is the first time I'll be printing these sheets, I'm not going to bother with the toggle because it won't matter. Let's click Publish. When I publish the sheets in the cloud, it's important to note that all of the processing is happening in the cloud. Okay, there's no processing happening on my local machine, so I don't have to worry about this tying up resources. The drawings are in the cloud, the CAD standards are in the cloud, and the processing is all happening in the cloud. While this is publishing, let me talk about the practical example we're going to be looking at here in a second. I'd like to take what we've learned here and apply that to the automated sheet creation tools in Civil 3D. We're going to be creating some automated plan and profile sheets. I'm going to click Open, and I'll select this file called P&P, and I'll click Open. This drawing includes a corridor, it includes an alignment and a profile. I've also created view frames here. In this example, I'm creating the automated plan and profile sheets. What I show you here is also going to work with the cross sections. Note, we can see that PDF just concluded. I'm going to jump over to the web browser here for a second, and we'll jump into the sheet set directory. And I can see this is still processing. Let me click on this real quick and see if we can see something. There we go. There's the details. And if I click on this, we can see the general notes, and we can see the cover sheet. All right, so that's the PDF I plotted. Let's go back to Civil 3D. I'll close this up. And to create my automated P&Ps, very similar to how we do it on a traditional server, I'm going to go to the Output tab, and I'll come down and choose Create Sheets. Just like on the local server, we can use whatever options we like here. For the layout creation, just in the interest of time, I'm going to choose all layouts in the current drawing, and I'll click Next. For the sheet set, I would like to add these sheets to an existing sheet set. I'll click the ellipsis button. And I would like to place these within my Wesley project sheet set. So I will select that project. I will go to the sheet set folder, and I'll select the sheet set that I'm currently working in. I'll click Open. Next. And then I can dial up the views the way I like. I'll choose the Choose Settings option. And I'm not going to use the Split Profile view. I'm going to adjust some of the labeling. Maybe I don't need to see the labels on some of these profiles. Okay, typical workflow. I'd like to see the utilities on these. And maybe I'd like to change the labels here on my band style. I'll click Next, Next, Finish, Create Sheets. This will save the sheets. I'll then click to place the new profile views up here. You can see the sheet set closes momentarily and pops back up. Now, a lot of things happened during that transaction. If you look down here, you can see that the new layouts have been created. We can see that there is a new subset now. If I'd like to rename this subset, I can select it and change the name here. If I expand the subset, we can see the layouts. I'm going to double click to open one of these. And if I zoom in, we can pan around and view these sheets. So the automated sheet creation tools work very similar to how they do on a local server, even when we're working in the cloud. One thing I would like to mention, let's zoom in here on the sheet number. When you create the automated sheets, you will likely want to renumber these. We've seen now that if I select the subset, I can right click, and from here I can choose auto numbering. For this example, I'm just going to type 50 as the start number and click OK. You can see how those renumber. Let's do a quick regen. Notice how that doesn't update right away. I've got a sheet number here. I've also got a sheet number up here on my match line. Those have not updated. Remember, there's a lot of things that happened during this transaction when it created those layouts and added them to the sheet set. It could take several minutes for those items to update within the model space environment. Okay, keep that in mind. They will update, but it may take a few minutes. I'm going to save this drawing, and let's try and plot these sheets. I'm going to right-click on the subset, and I'll choose Published PDF. This will publish these 3 sheets only. Once again, I'm going to keep the defaults here. Since I'm not saying to version up the original, it's going to create a file called Wesley Project, and it'll put the number 1 after it. This way, we'll be able to tell the difference between them. While this is processing, we'll do a quick summary. We have looked at a lot of things today. We looked at how we could manage external references in a cloud project. Remember that when you're externally referencing files, you want to make sure to save them to the cloud first before you start referencing them together. You'll also want to use relative paths. We also talked about data shortcuts. When it comes to data shortcuts, your working folder needs to be placed within the project folder, and it needs to be at least 1 level down from the project files directory. If you do that, your data shortcuts will work in the cloud just like they do on a local server. We also talked about the sheet set functionality. This was introduced in Civil 3D 2023.1, so you'll need to be using that version or newer to have access to that functionality in the cloud. We walked through several of the workflows. We also saw that when you are creating or plotting sheet sets, you'll need to have access to some CAD standards stored within a cloud project. As you can see, this PDF has wrapped up. I am going to jump back to the web browser, and then we'll open this new PDF file. And if I zoom in down here, notice the sheet number is correct. Likewise, if I pan this up, we can see the correct sheet number here on the match line. So all the data is correct. It will plot correct. It just takes a little time for it to update within the model space environment. Okay, dangerously close to the end of the session. Let me go back to my PowerPoint, and we'll bring up this slide. The resources I'm sharing here will be available to everybody that has access to this video. I'm also going to place these down in the description. I'm providing a link that will give you some documentation that covers several of the best practices for working with Civil 3D projects in the cloud. I'm going to be sharing a hyperlink that includes documentation that covers the ins and outs of data shortcuts when working in Civil 3D cloud projects. I'm also sharing documentation that covers the best practices and the how-tos for using the Sheet Set Manager for web. All right. After running through these 4 sessions, you're now ready to host a Civil 3D project in the cloud very similar to how you've been hosting them on a traditional server. At this point, I would recommend starting a pilot project. Upload some of your own content and test drive the workflows we've explored together. Put the cloud platform through its paces and see how it can best be used to improve your project collaboration. Along the way, the recordings of these 30-minute workout sessions and the recordings you can find on the learnacc.autodesk.com site will serve as a great reference tool to guide you on your way. In the big scheme of things, we have only scratched the surface when it comes to what the cloud platform can do. Things like swim lanes, team spaces, shared packages, coordination spaces, clash detection, meeting and correspondence management, among other things, are all topics for further exploration. If you like the format of these 30-minute workouts, please let the folks at Autodesk know. The more interest we have in these types of sessions, the more of them we can try and get scheduled in the future. If there are any remaining questions at this time, so long as we have your permission, we will get back to you with an answer. On behalf of Lou, Stacy, and myself, we want to say thank you so much for coming. We value your time. We hope you find value in these sessions, and we look forward to seeing you guys again at the next 30-minute workout.